What are the other impacts that the amendments, these policies have had?
Other impacts on South Africa?
On dual citizenship, on South Africans wanting to travel, on South Africans wanting to come back to the country.
If you lose your right to South African citizenship on this basis, in this specific section, you are deemed to be a permanent resident. So you still have a right to live and work in South Africa, you just don't have the right to a passport or to vote or any rights that are reserved for citizens. That's okay with a lot of people. They don't mind as long as they can stay here and visit the country. But if I have a lot of clients that will enter South Africa on their South African passport, so that it's not picked up at the airport, they have no idea that they've lost it. But when they approach the Department of Home Affairs, for whatever reason, to renew a passport, to apply for a new ID document, that's when they discover that they may have lost their South African citizenship. And they have to do a determination of a status application and await the outcome of that, which again could be 8 months to 1 year. So they're not, they're in this period where they don't know what their status is. And also, it's a criminal offense for a South African not to travel with a South African passport when you're exiting or entering. So a lot of them are afraid to leave. They have hope. Maybe I am still a South African. Maybe for whatever reason I have been excused. Maybe the basis that I acquired it on wasn't by naturalization. So they're stuck. They want to await the outcome and they're afraid to leave with a foreign passport. Also, if they do, they question how did they get back into the country, and they may be treated as an illegal foreigner.
So what advice would you give South Africans pertaining to their rights around citizenship?
I would say they need to do their research and homework. They must know that when they're making an application for citizenship, there are implications. They need to understand that. Citizenship is a human right. And being educated in your human rights is in itself a human right, and unfortunately we aren't educated. At least 10% of South Africans know what their rights are. So people need to do their homework, people need to make inquiries. It becomes difficult because you don't know who to inquire to, because often you'll call the Department of Home Affairs, or you'll call the mission, and you're either given the wrong advice, or they're not very helpful, or you turned away. But I would say that you need to make as many many calls as possible, do as much research as possible, check the law. It's available online, it's accessible.
What are the possible solutions to these restrictions?
Well, in this regard, again, as I said, depending on when you lost your South African citizenship status, if it was pre-95 or after 1995 that is, you can either apply for an exemption from the loss provision, or you can apply for a resumption of your South African citizenship status. But to resume, you can only do that after you've returned to the country permanently for at least a year.
Now, Stephanie, lastly, I wanted to touch on another aspect to the amendments to this Act, which have created unconstitutional barriers, I believe, around children born abroad to South African parents.
That's
Would you
right.
like to explain?
Children born abroad and children born in South Africa. Children born abroad are put on an equal footing as children born in South Africa, which in theory is perfect, but in practice it doesn't work, unfortunately, because the regulations, which were promulgated in 2010 as well, provides that unless the birth is registered, the foreign birth, so the Act provides that if at the time of your birth, your foreign birth, one of your parents was a South African citizen, you're a South African citizen. But then the regulation says your foreign birth must be registered within 30 days. If it's not registered, you lose the right. So in practice, it doesn't work. And the regulation is more restrictive than the Act. So it's ultra vires the Act, it's unlawful. Also, previously, in that case, if you're born abroad before 2010, you would apply for citizenship by descent. And you had that right whether or not your parent was alive. That's been taken away. The right to citizenship by descent has been reserved to children who are adopted by South African parents now only. That's the only category of children or group of children that apply for citizenship by descent. If you're born in South Africa and one of your parents at the time of your birth is a permanent resident, you're born a foreigner, whereas previously you were born a citizen. So they've reserved the right to citizenship in those cases to when the child becomes a major, when he or she turns 18. And our Constitution protects children's rights, particularly in this case to birth and or right to name and nationality at birth, whereas the amendment now reserves that right to being the age of majority, which is unconstitutional.
How can you have such a contradiction in sort of government laws?
I wish I knew the answer to that, but it exists, unfortunately. So now only after 18 years and after living in the country for 18 years is that child eligible for South African citizenship, when it should be a right at birth.
And what do you think the Department of Home Affairs or Minister of Home Affairs is trying to achieve with these amendments?
I wish I knew. I can't understand any legitimate goal that this could. It makes no sense in practice. It excludes children it excludes them from building a nation. It doesn't make any sense. Also, most countries, these parents who have permanent resident status, some of them may be from countries where they're not allowed, or they exclude children born in a foreign country from getting the parents' citizenship, so they can't pass on citizenship. So in a case like that, what happens is the child stateless. And in that case, there is a Section 2 of the Constitution, of the Citizenship Act, that protects children in that case, but it's unnecessary. It shouldn't be like that, and it makes no sense as to why they would impose such a strict restriction on nationality.
And again, finally, any possible solutions to these restrictions?
Again, make inquiries. You know, when your child is born, you're supposed to register the birth of your child within 30 days. It is very difficult to do that. I know 4 months ago I had a baby, and it is very difficult because you're in hospital, you're dealing with a new baby, you're dealing with certain issues. Some people have to travel very far to go to the Department of Home Affairs. Some people have financial issues. So it's difficult to register a child within 30 days. But if you do, when you do, make sure you understand what the status is. If you're not a South African citizen and the child is born in South Africa, what is the status of my child? Is he or she born a citizen? Is he or she born a foreigner? Do I need to get a visa for the child? What do I need to do? Okay. And that is, it sounds easier than it really is, because again, you go to the Department of Home Affairs and often you get the wrong advice.
Okay, Stephanie, thanks very much for your insight.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.